Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy that you guys joined us this evening to our Parent University. Tonight's Parent University session is on financial literacy and estate planning. And so tonight we have esteemed guests. I'm so happy that I call them the dynamic duo, Miss Christina Thomas and Mr. Randy Littlejohn. And then we also have on here Dr. Thomas, one of my coworkers, one of my favorite coworkers, because we get to collaborate on different things like Parent University. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Thomas, and she's going to introduce our two distinguished guests.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank Mr. Harrell so much for that wonderful introduction. And now I get to introduce our guests, and I'm super excited about this. What can I say about our first guest, Miss Christina Thomas? I have known Christina Thomas for at least 4 decades. She is an awesome attorney, does tons of pro bono work in DC, goes above and beyond to help anyone that she can in all legal matters. If you can't tell, we are sisters. So I definitely have an affinity in my heart towards her. But aside from her being my sister, she is a fantastic attorney, a great legal mind, and just an excellent attorney and all around great person. Our next guest is Mr. Randy Littlejohn, who also holds a very, very special place in my heart. He is an esteemed life insurance and financial expert. He has advised so many families in the St. Louis area, specifically North County, with various types of insurance. He is a wealth of knowledge and resources for all things insurance and finance related. So I am so happy that they're both here, and I'm going to turn it over to Christina, and I'll let her start.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Thomas, and I am an attorney in Washington, D.C. and the state of Maryland. I am a St. Louis native. Thank you. And you can see that I graduated from Mizzou, go Tigers. I also graduated from Webster University with a master's in teaching. I taught in St. Louis Public School and Normandy School District prior to moving to Washington, D.C. to attend Howard University. However, because I am speaking to a crowd in St. Louis, I already know that y'all want to know what high school I went to, and I will let you know that I am a proud Viking. I graduated from Normandy Senior High School. I am admitted to practice law in the District of Columbia and Maryland. So please take note that I am not giving legal advice for the state of Missouri. I am just giving information, and it's extremely important that you consult with a licensed Missouri attorney or Illinois attorney if you live on that side. So I practice estate law, elder law. Some people call it Medicare law. It depends on, what area you're in. But basically, estate planning has to do with taking care of your assets while you're here so that your relatives know what to do, or your loved ones, when you pass away. And although it can be a very difficult conversation, I don't know of another way for anybody to get out of here. We all die. And it's something that's really important that you take care of things like your financial assets, your healthcare directives and things like that, so that there's not a lot of infighting with families. So how did I become an estate planning attorney? Initially, I did not know what estate planning was. Like most people, the first time I remember dealing with something that's related to estate planning, which I learned later, was when my big mama passed away. She died well before I went to college, or definitely well before I became an attorney. And I just remember she had a lot of health issues. When she passed away, it was just a free-for-all at her house. Everybody was going down, taking everything. I still have one memento that I was able to get, but it was just a lot of chaos, a lot of fighting about the funeral and things like that. And at the time, I didn't know anything about estate planning. As I matriculated through law school and learned, I thought, oh, that's what was going on with our family. We didn't have an estate plan. The next time I became familiar with estate planning and the need for estate planning was during Hurricane Katrina. During Hurricane Katrina, I was a law student at Howard University. I was a summer intern at a corporate law firm, which I wound up working at after I graduated. And there was a huge need for attorneys after this catastrophic hurricane. They needed attorneys because if you're familiar with Hurricane Katrina or just disaster relief in general, FEMA provides relief for homeowners whose homes are damaged in hurricanes. So the problem in New Orleans was the community is huge of people that look like me and didn't have a lot of estate plans. So in order to get the assistance from FEMA, you had to be able to show that you were the owner of real estate. What happens a lot of times with communities of color in particular is that there are no estate plans. So when Big Mom passes away, Uncle Junior moves into the house until he passes away. Then Aunt Lacey will move into the house or somebody else will move in. And the title, which is recorded in the city's recorder of deeds, who has the legitimate name of the owner, is never changed. So when Hurricane Katrina happened, you had thousands of families that could not receive the FEMA relief because they could not prove, although the house was indeed in their family, they couldn't prove ownership. They didn't have clear title. So estate planning is really essential for things such as that. Another reason why estate planning becomes crucial is because I don't know of too many people that plan to go into a nursing home. It's usually something that is a last resort. And when you have an estate plan, it really sets out what your desires are. You give authority to your relatives or loved ones to make decisions on your behalf. And one of those things can include, where do you go? What happens to you if you're unable or you become incapacitated and are unable to make healthcare or financial decisions? Next slide. So when is a good time to start estate planning? I love this meme. I found this on Instagram, and it's so true when it comes to estate planning, is that you need to start before you're ready. When you're talking about dying, we all are going to die, but most people don't want to have that conversation. So a lot of my clients, I advise them, just think about it like car insurance. Everybody, first of all, it's illegal to drive without car insurance. You have to have car insurance. And when you get car insurance, you have to talk about things like your liability. You have to talk about things like medical payments and your deductibles. But you do that, maybe you spend 2 or 3 days doing it. Maybe you find an aggregator app that can give you the best rate, and you don't really think about it after that. You don't get in the car every day and think, oh my God, I'm gonna die. So estate planning to me is just like car insurance, but it's insurance for your life. You're making sure that you have everything that you need in place. So in the event of your untimely demise, everybody around you, your relatives and your loved ones, they know what to do. So where do you start when it comes to estate planning? This is just a meme of a lot of legalese. Legalese just means words that lawyers say that sometimes people don't understand what they mean. One place that you can start really is just with social media. When I was looking for estate planning attorneys in the area of Fayetteville, I believe, North Carolina. First of all, let me date myself just a little bit. When I used to do research, we used to have to look in the yellow pages, okay? So now it's a lot easier. You can just do a hashtag to look for whatever it is you need. So if you have someone that has passed away, or you are working with a client like me that has assets in another area, or a relative that passed in another area, I literally just looked on Instagram for estate planning attorneys in North Carolina, which directed me to estate planning attorneys that have links to their websites. And then I just interviewed them from there. But one of the things that I have on my website is simple estate plans, or simple things that you can do, because everybody can't always afford an attorney. But there are some things that you can do that you don't need an attorney for, just to start setting yourself up for estate planning later on, or just to make sure that you have some things in place so that when you do pass away, or if you do become incapacitated or ill, your family knows what to do. A simple thing that everybody can do that doesn't cost any money, and I've already checked in Missouri and Illinois, they have these. They're called pay on death or transfer on death. So if you have a bank account, the easiest thing to do is to just fill out, it can be called pay on death or transfer on death, depending on the jurisdiction. Is to complete the form that your bank or credit union will give you for free, and you designate who should have access, who should receive all of your money in the event that you pass away. You don't need an attorney to do that. It's totally free. Your bank or credit union can assist you with it. And that's something that can be taken care of relatively easily. Another thing that you can do when it comes to estate planning without an attorney is do a transfer on death deed for your home. Now, let's go back to the story about Hurricane Katrina. Now, a transfer on death deed is not as easy as doing a pay on death for an account, because a transfer on death deed, in some states, you can get these documents for free. You can go onto a lot of these lawyer websites, like national websites like NOLO, and pay maybe $30 to $50 for one of these. But it's really advisable that you talk with an attorney, or that you speak with a real estate agent or a title person that can help you make sure that the deed is filled out properly, because you have to have the legal description of the property, so that when you record it, it has to be recorded for it to be effective, that your family doesn't have to go through the probate process when you die. So if you have a transfer on death deed for your home, if some of the people in New Orleans had that, then the moment they died, the transfer automatically takes place to whoever you've listed as your beneficiary. And same with the bank account. Once you complete those forms, there's nothing left for you to do. And the great thing about those is that legal word, they're revocable. Revocable just means that you can change it. So say, for instance, you are married and you complete a pay on death deed for your bank accounts and you get a divorce. One of the things that you want to do is make sure you go back and change that, cancel that, revoke that pay on death deed, so that you can put your child or your best friend or whoever else you would like to receive that money instead of your ex-partner. Same with the transfer on death deed. If you transfer the property, or you intend to transfer the property to someone, say for instance, you decide you want to transfer the property to your mother, but then your mother passes away before you do. You want to have someone else that can take the property in the event that you die. So these are things that are really simple and easy to do without an attorney, or maybe a small fee to have someone review the deed, review the legal description, and record it. But it's not going to cost you thousands of dollars to do those things. And it will save you. Well, actually, it will save your family, because once this is needed, you will be going on to glory. But it will save your family thousands of dollars in the long run, and the headache. Another place where you can start if you're looking for an estate planning attorney is the Bar Association. Bar associations usually have recommendations. They have, actually interned when I was in law school at Legal Services of Eastern Missouri. They can direct you to different websites or different attorneys that will be able to assist you. They can't give you a specific attorney, but usually they'll give you like 3 or 4 recommendations so that you can interview the attorneys on your own. And if you're like me and you grew up in a family where you didn't have an attorney, you really appreciate having someone else make recommendations and referrals. So bar associations are really good for that. And like I said, Instagram, social media is fantastic. Just search for a hashtag for whatever it is you need, and you can generally find an attorney with a link to their website in their bio. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what we just talked about. A lot of times people are really trepidatious about talking about death and things like that, but when it comes to cars and cell phones, we are so quick to pay the $12 a month to insure your phone. And even if you have the iPhone 13, that's what, $1,000. But I would beg to say that everybody's life is worth more than $1,000. So if you can take the time to research and find out, how to insure your phone and your car, I think it's worth it to insure your life, because whether you have children, whether you have a spouse, there's going to be someone here left to deal with all of your stuff, because we can't take any of these things with us. And you want to make sure that it's easy for them. And one of the things I tell my clients is that I like a candy. It's called Now and Later, but we pronounce it now later. I let my clients know you can either pay now or you can have your family pay later. For instance, if you are working with an attorney to do an estate plan, they can run you anywhere from $500 to $5,000, depending on how many assets you have. And sometimes people think, oh, well, I don't need an estate plan because I don't have much. If you have a car, if you have a bank account, if you have a cell phone, the estate plan is just saying who all of those things go to when you pass away. And if you think about it in terms of, sometimes you'll need these things before you pass away, because you could be incapacitated, you could have an accident where maybe you're in a coma or something for a few months. With COVID, this has been very popular, with more people signing up for estate plans and making sure that they have their life affairs in order, because you never know what's going to happen and you really just want to be prepared. So it's really important to pay the money up front, pay a little bit now, so that your family doesn't have to pay a whole lot later. Case in point, I work in an office with other estate planning attorneys. I think we are the best estate planning office in the DMV, and that's DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And we've had cases where a simple estate plan could have saved the family thousands. I'm talking about thousands, upwards of $70,000, $80,000 in legal fees. Because if your family's anything like the families that I counsel and some of my clients and some members of my family, when people pass away, tensions flare, people start arguing, and you can really spend a lot of money on legal fees because people are arguing about who gets what and what did granny want or what did daddy want. And the lawyers make all of the money versus planning upfront and paying a couple $100 to a couple $1,000s to have everything done. So in the event that you are laid up in the hospital, with an illness, or you've been in an accident and you're unable to make decisions for yourself, or in the event of your demise, there's no guesswork. Everything is already done for you. Next slide. And this is another meme that I found. Just saying that it's really important that you work with a professional. The last slide we talked about using Instagram and social media to find lawyers, and do your research the same way you look at, iPhone 13 Pro versus iPhone 13 versus iPhone Mini. You want to do the same thing when you're dealing with a lawyer. And just like anything else, all lawyers are not created equal. Some lawyers are terrible. I happen to think I'm the best. I feel like, I'm from St. Louis, and I really had the motto that I am number one. 2 is not a winner, and 3, nobody remembers. So if you're in the DMV, then you want to come to me. If you're in St. Louis, I have some attorneys that I have now actually I'm working with, because we had a death in our family and we had to do probate because our family member decided not to do a will. And it's costing us money to do these things, but you want to make sure that you get a professional. You want to make sure that you have somebody that has a great reputation. And when you work with someone, especially when you're dealing with legal issues, it's not always the best to go to the cheapest. We know that when it comes to food, we know that when it comes to phones and technology, but sometimes when we're dealing with hiring a professional, even if it's just somebody for your hair, you think, oh, I want to, get a break, but you really do get what you pay for. So it's important that in all of these things, you get a professional, which brings me to my next slide. And before I get to this is really a segue into Mr. Littlejohn's presentation. And I've known Randy Littlejohn for over 20 years. He actually was the first insurance agent I ever had in St. Louis. The first car that I got that wasn't a hoopty, it was a brand new Ford Escort. I was so proud of my little ZX2. And I sat and called all around in the yellow pages trying to find insurance. And at the time I was under 25. I think I was only 21 years old. So insurance was ridiculously high and the prices were going to be more than my car payment. And I found Mr. Littlejohn and have been a client and a friend with him ever since. And this is a show that I actually saw in St. Louis with Mr. Gary, the king of hospitality, who I learned is a Mizzou grad. And it's going to speak for itself. So if we can just get to 2222. Can anybody else hear? I don't have audio.
Dr. Thomas, you might need to unmute your screen.
Okay, let me start over.
This was just so fitting to me. And he says it in a way that I cannot. It comes up right after this. So if you can just bring up the volume. I can't hear it, but if you're watching this,
Can you all hear it?
Dr. Thomas?
You can't hear it?
No.
The volume is all the way up on my How about this? Anybody who wants the link, we'll put the link to the video in the chat, and you start at 2022.
Right, and this is one of his sponsors, Mr. Gary, the king of hospitality, and he does his whole spiel about the need to plan and the need to be able to take care of yourself, even, once you pass away. And he's saying basically, and he says, and I quote, if you can't afford to die, stop dying. All of this GoFundMe and all of this, that's the purpose of having life insurance. Phone insurance is about $12 a month for, a new phone. You can get life insurance for maybe double that, depending on what your policy is. And if you have even a small policy, $10,000 that will pay for your cremation or things like that, it's something that's really affordable. And then when somebody passes away, you don't have to wait for donations for the community to be able to bury or take care of your loved ones or pay their final expenses. And with that, I turn it over to Mr. Littlejohn.
Well, before we turn it over to Mr. Littlejohn, Christina, you have one question in the chat. Mr. Harold, would you read the question?
Absolutely. The question in the chat was from a gentleman named Mr. Littlejohn. And the question was, how and where does one record a deed? How and where does one record a deed? And for our guests that logged in, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll definitely get those questions answered. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You record a deed at the Recorder of Deeds office in your city or county. And in St. Louis, you go downtown. I think that's like right off Market Street. They're extremely helpful. You want to make sure now when you go, they cannot give legal advice. So they can't help you complete the deed. They can let you know if you have missed an area where you need to sign or something, but it's important that you have someone review the deed, and the deed needs to be notarized before you take it to the Recorder of Deeds. And it's also extremely important to remember that I just had a case like this where the family contacted me, the mother passed away, and they completed a transfer. The mother was transferring the property to her 2 daughters. She had 1 son and 2 daughters. The son passed away. The son has 3 children. The mother is estranged from the grandchildren, and she was ill, and she drafted a deed, completed the transfer form, but they did not record the deed, even though it was notarized. So the mother passed away, and then the family contacted me because now the 2 would-be heirs, the daughters, want to know if they have the rights to this home. And it's a home of significant value. However, because the deed was not recorded, there's something when you're dealing with property called the Statute of Frauds. And that means that anything that's dealing with the sale or transfer of real property has to be in writing. So, the family was explaining that this is what mom wanted. She expressed this to us. We had this notarized, and unfortunately it was of no moment, meaning it did not matter at all what her wishes were, because once she passed away, the only thing that controls is what's recorded. So had that deed been recorded, there would be nothing to do. But now the family has to pay expensive legal fees to handle this. And although the owner, now the decedent mother, wished for her daughters to have it because she was estranged from these other relatives, now the property has to be split between 5 people. Well, technically 3, because there were 2 daughters, 1 son who passed away, and the son's children have to split his share. So it's really important that when you do purport to transfer anything in real property, that you get it. You complete the deed form, you have the legal description, and the legal description is not the address. You're going to need to speak with an attorney or go online to get the legal description for the property that you're interested in, or that the property that you're going to be transferring the ownership of. And then you want to make sure that you get the form notarized, and then you record it at the Recorder of Deeds. That will be either in your city or county. Were there any other questions?
Looked like that was the only question, unless someone have a question before we transition into Mr. Littlejohn's presentation. And in the chat, I did put St. Louis City and St. Louis County Recorder of the Deeds information in the chat for anyone that might need it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tina, I asked that questions. I already knew the answer, but I figured that other people needed to know as well.
Well, thank you, Randy.
Just looking out for you. Now, who is Randy Littlejohn? That's me. I've been in the insurance industry. First of all, thank you. Thank you for those who are listening in. I love sharing information. And as Tina and Dr. Thomas mentioned, I've known them a long time, and they are a pleasure to know and to associate with. I've been in the insurance industry for over 30 years. Dr. Thomas, well, I forgot which one, mentioned real estate at first. I've invested in real estate as well. I'm all about financial services. I'm all about learning things. I was actually, I met them as an agency owner for Allstate. Uh, as Tina mentioned, she was looking for insurance on their car, and I helped them out with that. And I just fell in love with these two young ladies. Um, I left Allstate about 10 years ago, 12 years ago this month. And now I'm an independent broker with the Littlejohn and Associates Agency. Yes, that is me. A graduate of Lincoln University. Put your hand over your heart when you say Lincoln. And by the way, a graduate of Lincoln University, one of the minority owners of the Milwaukee Bucks, a female, graduated from Lincoln University about 3 or 4 years after I did. Just something to notice. Yeah, I like that. Life insurance is like fun. Tina mentioned life insurance. And she mentioned using it for burial. That is one of the reasons for it. Well, I've been in the insurance industry, like I said, for over 30 years. What I major in or what I look at mostly now is life insurance, financial services, and Medicare. And I've been licensed in financial services as well as Medicare security license and well, but I like the life insurance part of best. I also know about P&C. P&C is property and casualty. That's auto and homeowners and what have you. Next slide, please. When should people start planning? Yesterday, as a child, if you haven't done it already, right now. It may not be too late. With life insurance, or yesterday is the best time. Always right now, always planning, and it should be a plan that's flexible enough to change because life change. The only constant is knowing that everything changes. Next slide, please. Where do people access such services? From professionals, of course. You have life specialists, you have financial advisors. Tina mentioned social media. That's where a lot of people can look first. I would also suggest that if you have insurance now, ask your insurance agent. He may or may not sell, but he can also refer you to someone or ask someone that you know. Everybody should have life insurance. And it's more than just for a death benefit. You have to have what's called, you use life insurance. I would like to say everybody has an economic value. If you earn, they say it takes about $1 million to raise a child, but just to have an idea, we're all, or most of us, believe it or not, are millionaires in the making. If you earn $50,000 a year, times 20 years, you would have earned $1 million. If you earn $25,000 a year, 40 years, you would have earned $1 million. If you have a child, a new baby, and you die, somebody has to raise that child. And they say quite often, it used to be that figures like $1 million to raise a child through college and what have you. And with the way that inflation is now, it's going to be a lot more than that. But life insurance is more than just for burying a person, it's to replace the income. And I was about to say as well, that if you have an insurable interest, a lot of us have spouses. We may not have a spouse, but you may have a father or mother of your child. Even if you're not married, you still have an insurable interest in that person. Raising a child, I like telling my younger clients, raising a child is not a 50-50 proposition. It is a 100-100 proposition. You're each 100% responsible for that child. And by law, you're responsible until the age of 18, and sometimes until they actually get out of school. By spiritually speaking, and I'm a Christian man, you're responsible for each other throughout your life while you're always here, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be financially responsible. But it is always good to plan ahead of how to take care of your loved ones if you're not here. Someone with whom you have a professional relationship who can refer you if they can't write it themselves is where you should be looking for. Somebody who knows about life insurance. Also, always study. Look it up on the internet. What's the difference between whole life and term insurance? Sort of like the difference between, I saw the question as, a good explanation would be renting a house versus owning a house. Term insurance is good for a certain amount of time or term. And after that time expires, the price of it is going to go up. The older you get, the more expensive life insurance becomes because you're closer to death. And so you have a term insurance. Sometimes it's hard to find one that's annual renewable renews every year. The most popular are either 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, or 30 years. Every time that policy comes up for renewal in 5 years, it's going to be that much, it's going to cost more to buy. Excuse me. Whole life insurance comes in a number of different ways. It can be traditional whole life. It has what I like to call living benefits. It can be a traditional whole life policy. It can be a universal life policy. It can be a variable life insurance policy that's also tied to the stock market. And another type of universal life. But those cost a little bit more because they have a savings vehicle tied to it. What I like mostly myself, and a lot of term policies are convertible to permanent policies as well. I particularly specialize in whole life insurance with the mutual company. And the reason for that is whole life insurance has guarantees that you can count on. Universal life or variable universal life, those types, they have some guarantees, but they don't have the same guarantees that a traditional or better whole life policy has. And I use a mutual company in particular because they pay dividends on the cash value versus a stock company may not pay dividends on it. And the companies that I deal with have been around for over 100 years, and the dividends are not guaranteed, but they pay the companies that I deal with have paid dividends every year. They do have a guaranteed cash value in the savings portion of it, and that may be anywhere from 2% up to 4%. It's guaranteed to pay. Now, you're not going to see the cash value, may not see the cash value right away. Some policies, it may take 7 or 8, 10 or 12 years to actually start seeing the cash value. But the way that I design policies, if you're interested in the cash value of it, some of them can have cash value within the first year. And part of that money can be accessible to you once the cash value has accumulated. Some policies that I design within the first, after 4 or 5 years, sometimes 7 or 10 years, all the money that you put into it is available in the cash value. It just depends on how the policy is designed. And you need a special type of insurance agent who knows how to design them. There was a guy, I've been to a few of his seminars, named Nelson Nash. He wrote a book called Becoming Your Own Banker. And it's a complicated book to read if you're not in the industry, but I just love reading anyway. Or you might even want to Google the idea that he came up with called infinite banking concept, infinite INFINITE banking concept, or you might hear other people, if you Google it, Bank on Yourself, or IBC, which is the acronym for Infinite Banking Concept. But it's a whole lot to get into that we don't have the time to do here, but put that in the back of your mind and Google that information, because I think it can work, as my opinion, it can work as well as a 401k. So what was the question that I just saw? Do I remember what? I'm trying to answer the questions as I go along as well.
There was a question, do you recommend the insurance policies that credit unions solicit when they send you mail asking you to sign up for an insurance policy through their credit union?
I would say this to you. Some insurance is better than none. Most of those are probably going to be term insurance. Some companies, it'll be a policy that may only be an accidental death policy, meaning that they only pay if the accident is a result of, if the death is a result of accident. Some insurance is usually better than no insurance at all. And as I said, you have different ways. You have credit cards that offer insurance and things like that. But being a professional myself, I would suggest that you consult with a professional that you know or that you trust. And a good professional is going to listen to what you, well, go to the next slide. I think I mentioned that as well. A good professional is going to sit down with you and review, and they may not write the policy the first day. They may gather a lot of financial information from you, help you determine how much is enough for you, and help you determine how much you can afford, or I say help you determine, because you know your budget better than anybody else does. But you should be aware of it, and he'll help you determine what fits your budget. And you might end up buying a term policy that's convertible to a whole life policy or universal life, whichever fits what your needs are. Or you might buy a combination of both term and permanent or whole life insurance. It just depends on how your consultation goes. Why life insurance? What does it matter if I'm already gone? Life insurance, because you care about your loved ones and you care about yourself. You can leave a legacy. Life insurance can be one of the best investments you've ever made. And we should not refer to it as an investment in the sense of the stock market and what have you. But if I write a policy, I'll give you a very good example. My brother is passed, God rest his soul. I had just started with Allstate in December 11th, 1987, I believe. 1989. On November the 12th, 1989, I wrote a life insurance policy on him. It was issued, and on December the 12th, 1990, I wrote that policy in 1990, November the 12th. December the 11th, 1990, he was murdered. And there's a clause in most companies and in most states that say a policy is contestable the first 2 years, which means that if you write a policy and you don't tell the truth on the policy, or you misquoted something, or like you might have, there's a different rate for a smoker versus a non-smoker. But if they found out, if you pass, and they would investigate, they don't have to pay the policy off if there's false information on there, or they don't have to pay as much. If you said that you are a non-smoker, but they found out that you died as a result of cancer because you smoke, they technically will probably still pay it, but not as much of it, because there's a different rate for a smoker versus a non-smoker. When my brother passed, I said, well, they're going to pay this off. did I do everything right? And I said, yeah, I did everything right. As a matter of fact, I basically took the application over the phone, and he told me, go ahead and sign, or fill it out, you know everything. And I started to sign it. I said, no, I better let him sign it. I'm glad I did, because one of the things that they did is they sent out a handwriting expert. And if I had not made sure that he signed it, I might be in jail right now, along with the guy who murdered my brother, by the way. He got life plus. He's still in jail now. He's eligible for parole, but he's still in jail right now. But it is very important. And you know, they say insurance money makes people act funny. What's interesting about it is the beneficiary of it. And I wrote, you have to have what's called an insurable interest. And I wrote her as the beneficiary, and I wrote myself as the contingent beneficiary. A contingent beneficiary is the person who's, because the beneficiary dies first. Well, what happens is, I remember the underwriting called and asked, well, what's a paramour? I worked for the welfare agency back 35, 40 years ago. I'm dating myself too. And we used to say a paramour is French for a live-in lover. And he was living with her and helping her raise her children. And for a split, would not have been a problem to change myself to the beneficiary before they issued the policy, since they questioned it. But I did, but for a split second, I said, I could have had this insurance money. And that surprised me, because, and it only lasted a split second, but it surprised me because money does make people act funny. Tina, you mentioned how people were fighting over things with your big mama. That's how people come out of, things come out of the woodwork. Some of the worst characters can come out then. But I was glad it wasn't me, because I did not want to have to figure out how to deal with that kind of money then. And I remember her giving her the money and saying, this is a lot of money, but at the same time, it's not much at all. And because we don't always understand money, one of the reasons why people who win the lottery end up broke again is because they can't comprehend or understand how much money that is and how much it is not. That's why you need professionals or good advisors that you can depend on for yourself. But that's just a personal story, and it always brings memories back. Because as I said, I started with Allstate on December 11th, 1989. He got killed on December 11th, 1990. And I always remember that. I had taken a few notes, Tina, when you were talking as well. You mentioned something about nursing homes. As I said, I worked with the welfare office back in the early 80s. And part of what happens if you own a home, because I worked with the nursing home department of it, if you own a home and have to go to a nursing home, if a deed, they'll want you to sell that home in order to pay for that nursing home care.
So you were going in and out, Randy.
I was muted.
No, your
What was the
Wi
last thing you heard me say?
Wi-Fi,
Can you hear me now?
is going in and out. You're getting stuck.
Okay. Do you have a question about something that I was saying then? Or what was the last thing that you heard me say? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. You were talking about nursing homes and people possibly having to sell their homes to care for,
Yeah,
to cover the fee.
that's a good reason for having, as the attorney was saying, having somebody on the loan, or what do you call it, a transfer of deed or death on deed. And in particular, if that person is the only has to go into a nursing home, they don't qualify. They may not qualify for public aid because they still have the home. Probably what would work better anyway if you could still have in-home care.
So I have a question, Mr. Harold. Is it possible that you can list Mr. Littlejohn's information in the chat, or I don't know if that would show up if it's
Yeah,
when
we
it's
can record
recorded
the
and
chat.
it's placed? Okay,
Yeah, we will record the chat too. And so we
because
can,
you all talked about a lot of great things and people may have questions. And I know you had your
And y'all froze on
email
me.
address and phone number, Mr. Littlejohn.
Yes.
So people will be able to contact you once they watch this presentation.
Yeah, the office number is 314-329-8443. I don't always call myself that, but that's forwarded to my cell phone as well. And my email address is randylittlejohn@att.net. Oh, I meant to tell y'all too. I meant to make a couple of funnies for you. What high school did I go to? I attended the oldest high school west of the Mississippi, and that is not Sumner. White
So
folks
they-
had high schools first. Central is the oldest high school west of the Mississippi. There's also the high school that the first Black mayor of St. Louis graduated from, Mayor Bosley, and he was in the class behind me. And